I am discovering through personal experience and the experience of those around me that in many facets of our culture, I think a huge problem that no one is talking about is the lack of accountability among generations to support one another. Like there has been an inherent selfishness with both the younger generation towards the older and the older towards the younger, in a sense where I get this feeling across social media. I get this feeling like when I talk to my friends. I get this feeling myself. I get this feeling when I talk to older people, when I talk to younger people. And it's this feeling of like, no one wants to get over themselves to do their generational duty. And what I mean by that is like the younger generation, like Gen Z, millennials, are struggling so much with their circumstances that the easiest thing to do is just blame and complain. So they fall, most of them fall victim to a victimhood mentality, right? We've talked about that before. And then on the flip side, it's like the older generation, instead of being like, you know what, how could I help, you know, the younger generation in my circle of influence to get up and to make it in the world? They just they just prefer to like generalize and bash and say like, well, every young person is lazy and every young person has it easy, right? And it's like, it's just this revolving circle of pointing fingers. And I think it's contributed to the state of our country more than most people are talking about. And I mean, as a young person, America specifically the West does a terrible job of making a young person feel like they're an adult at any certain time. It's like when you turn 16, okay, you can drive, but you're not 18 yet. You turn 18, okay, yeah, you're seen as an adult. Gillette will send you a freaking razor in the mail. Happy birthday. And like you can vote, can you vote at 18? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah,
you can vote at 18. Yeah. But you can't drink yet. And then it's like, you got to wait till you're 21. And it's like, okay, I'm 21. Oh, now I must be seen as a man, or now I must be seen as a woman and not just a girl or not just a boy. And it's like, oh no, don't you know your frontal lobe's not fully developed till you're 25? By the way, you also can't rent a car till you're 25.
Yeah.
Oh, also you can stay on your parents' insurance till you're 25. And then you turn 25 and it's like, yeah, okay, sure, but you're not really an adult till you get to 30. And it's like, or if you want to go by like achievements, then it's like, oh, well, you're not really adult till you get married. Mm-hmm. Then you get married, it's like, oh, well, you're not really an adult till you're paying your own bills, and you pay your own bills, right? Or vice versa. It's like, oh, you're not really an adult until you have kids. You have kids, and like, oh, you're not really an adult till you have a mortgage and kids and a dog and a wife. You know, oh, well, you know, and it's just like, well, it's like when, right? And
yeah,
it may sound like a mute, like silly point, but there's a reason that Native Americans were so serious about sending their young boys out and saying, you cannot come back to this tribe until you complete X, Y, and Z. Like you kill this animal, whatever, you know, you do this certain tribute. And the point of that was they had to prove their value to society, to that society and that culture. And when they did that, they returned and every single person in the village considered them a man.
That's very true.
Right? And we don't have anything like that in our culture. And so what it does is it just it gives no incentive for young people who are struggling to get a grip on adulthood. And then God forbid they're freaking, you know, empowered by someone around them, or not empowered, but like codependent on someone around them, and someone around them like feeds into this victimhood mentality. They're basically screwed. I mean, how do you get out of that until you have a major life decision to make, basically? So this whole like rant I'm on is basically trying to say, like, I think that it's both generations, or it's like the older and the younger's responsibility to work together to do this. And I'm personally just frustrated at some older people that just continue to like punch down on what I feel like is a generation that is experiencing some of the most ambiguous things that we've ever had as a country. It's like, okay, if we're going to war, I can understand that, right? Like I can like we're going to war. That's a big deal, right? But it's
Mhm.
like, no, we're in this like social media, ambiguous, anxiety-filled, depression-ridden monster that no one seems to realize is actually destroying their brain, right?
Yeah.
And like frying their dopamine receptors. And it's like everyone laughs at that and it's like, ha 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 ha, yeah. And then goes back to watching reels.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And it's
Yeah.
like, it's just a different battle. Like it's not better or worse or harder or not. Like it's just different. You know, the
Mhm.
economy is just different. School is just different. Politics, it's just different. It's just different. And it's like, it's not comparing apples to apples. It's not. It's like
Mhm.
apples and oranges. And so one thing that I'm really going to be cognizant of as I get older is not putting down young people and really trying to encourage them. And listen, you know, there's people on both sides, the younger and the older, who are amazing hard workers. They want to get better. And there's a lot of old people that see that and they want to help. Older people want to help, right?
Yeah.
There's definitely people like that.
Yeah, for sure.
But I would say like the majority consensus is like there's this infighting that is, I don't know if it's always been like that, at least in the West, I'm not sure, but man, it is just like so frustrating because when you hold someone to a higher standard, and you believe in them, like it can really transform their lives.
Yeah.
You know,
right,
it gives them
right.
purpose.
Yeah. What do you think is the do you think there's like a root cause to this whole situation? Do you think it is just the fact that we don't have like a
Honestly, I think
this is what you do when you become a man kind of thing, or
it's a lot of different things. I think the rise of secularism really hurt that a lot because this idea of like subjectivity, of just kind of like, well, you know, we give meaning. Meaning is ambiguous, right? And I think that has made its way into purpose. And so if you don't have someone who's grounded in some kind of purpose, then I don't think the culture thing would matter. So I think it's kind of both and, right? It's like we need to give people purpose and meaning. And we believe like the best way to do that is through a relationship with Jesus, because it gives them an eternal meaning all of a sudden. But if you're not religious or you're not spiritual, you're not a Christian or whatever, like you can still experience purpose in your life. But I think we're kind of burning the candle at both ends, if that makes sense. And it's like, it's difficult because there's not one thing you can point to. Like, it doesn't make sense anymore for us to just be like, okay, you're 18, go out and kill a deer, come back and we'll treat you like a man.
Right.
Because society is not dependent on like a kill and eat type thing, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
they also can't necessarily go out and get a job and like right then to prove that they can, because you can't support yourself in this economy with a job unless it's like a trade or you get really, really good at sales. It's just a lot harder to do that now. And so you typically have to go to college or you have to go to a trade school. And so it just gets like, it gets prolonged, right?
Even if you go to college, and when you come out of college, even then you still might not be able to support yourself.
Exactly. And so what do? They
regular
you go
job.
back to college. Either you go back to college because you just don't know what to do and you rack up more debt, or you get into a job that you never really wanted in the first place. And so now you're like, what am I doing all this for? Right? And it's like, only so I can make just barely enough money to scrape by, or like, and then you have boomers who are like selling their house that they bought in 1972 for like $10 and they're making like 100x on their money.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know, no wonder, right?
Yeah.
And then you have like boomers are frustrated because they're hiring a bunch of Gen Z kids who just want to be freaking influencers and they don't want to work hard.
Do you think it's also kind of like a rise of like individualism?
Yes.
Like everyone's trying to kind of like build their ego, build their like own way of success, I guess.
Dude. 100%. That's a great point.
Because I feel like we're more and more we're losing that communal aspect of life. Like everything is, I mean, dude, forever, like success was kind of based on like when a man was successful, like it wasn't just him, like his whole family,
Extended
for
family.
extended family, like for generations, he was like successful, dude. Like, and even that now is kind of lost. What?
What a great segue into the Old Testament language.
Right, dude. Right. I just thought about that when I was going to go into it.
Yeah, and I mean, it's funny you say that because it's like, I mean, that is kind of our mission of Second Floor is to
Yes.
bring people of all ages and generations and ways of life together.
Yes. Because even like in the family now, it's even still, you're kind of like, you turn 18 and you're kind of expected to move out and make it on your own all of a sudden, right? And there's like I don't know, sometimes it just seems like everything it's just very self-centered.
It is.
It's all based on like, okay, how can I be successful?
Yeah.
And that's like all that matters.
Yes.
Really. So then everything that you do revolves around that, like making connections. It's like, okay, how, like, what can I get from this person that's going to make me look good or make me be successful?
Dude.
Right. And it's just, I don't know what, like, maybe you can help me out with this, but like, why do you think that takes away from, like why do you think that hurts, I guess,
development?
Yeah, like becoming an adult, like that, like why does that take away from each side giving each other the respect that they deserve?
It really
like,
is a respect thing. It's like man, what I wouldn't give to hear someone sit down in front of me who's 30, 40, 50 years old and say, man, I see what your generation's dealing with. Like, you guys are going through it, but like, you know what? I see even more so, like, I see you guys as the generation that's going to like help us navigate this. And like, now all of a sudden you're giving that person a purpose of like, this is difficult. And I believe that you have what it takes, but you gotta be strong. Like, that's where the encouragement comes in, I think, but it's that mutual respect of, and then the younger person, I believe that the older person should set that example. I think that is the responsibility of the older person, is to set the example of that type of respect, or at least like awareness or acknowledgement. And then the young person should follow that, not with a snarky remark, not with it's terrible for us, I can never get ahead. It's like, they should follow with like, and I also see how your generation is struggling with this, like the retirement aspect of boomers, and all these things are happening where it's kind of unprecedented in the older generations too. There's this great transfer of wealth happening, all these things. And now all of a sudden you have a conversation where two people are trying to understand each other versus two people saying, well, this is the reason that your generation, I've had people say that to my face where they're like, dude, your generation just sucks. Like, they just don't know anything. And it's like, you're just throwing up a line that you freaking heard on TikTok or the news or something. Like, I don't know. It's just,
well, I think the irony is that the generation before them probably said the same thing about them.
That's exactly what it is.
It's like every generation has had their crisis.
Yes.
Right? Like, I can imagine living through World War II.
Yes.
Or like the freaking Civil War, right?
Insane.
Like insane times. But even now, it's like every generation goes through something that the previous generation never experienced.
Yes.
Like, for us right now, it is this technology age that like no one in the human race has ever, that we know of, has ever like experienced this level of technology.
Yes.
Where I can literally FaceTime someone across the world right now. Like, and like, we're all so connected in so many ways. But there's also this whole thing of like screens that just takes over our lives now. Like, these things are literally, I mean, Elon Musk talks about like, this whole thing of like being literally connected to our smartphones. Like, they talk about, I forget the word they use, but for instance, like Neuralink, right?
Yeah.
he talks about how like we're basically already there. Like the only difference between Neuralink, like putting a chip in your brain and your phone, is that it's inside of you. But like we already can't live without technology. Like
Yeah.
our phones go everywhere with us, right?
Yep.
So the generation before us did not have that
Mm-mm.
like we do now. So
Mhm.
each generation has these battles that they have to learn to deal with, but it's not going to help if you're just punching up or punching down
Yeah.
for
It's
either
not-
side.
It's just not going to solve any problems.
Yeah.
And so I mean, think about the freaking Generation Alpha, like that's coming up behind us, and they're having to deal with having a tablet in their hand from the time they were alive.
Yeah.
Like 0 days old, they're coming out the womb, and then they're watching TV the next day.
Yeah.
Where it's like for us, I think growing up, obviously we had TV, but we didn't have like smartphones that
Yes.
young, right? Like it was when we were middle school, then things like the iPhone really started to come out,
Yeah.
and it's like that's different, right? That's
Yeah,
different
for sure.
I have this generation of iPad kids that went through COVID during school, you know, and it's
Yeah.
like that's a different thing than what we dealt with.
Yeah. These kids now are going to have AI
Yeah.
like fully integrated within their lives. Like
Yes, and in their schoolwork, like it's so easy. Like it's the easiest to cheat there's ever been to
Yeah.
cheat in school. You know, so
Yeah.
it's like the teachers now have to figure out how are they gonna like make sure kids are actually learning.
Yeah, dude.
But then what's the point of like then you get into the education system where what's the point of doing all this if AI is going to take over some of it?
Exactly.
So should you
Yeah.
should you be teaching the kids how to use AI?
Yes.
But
Right.
the education system's not gonna catch
Right.
up that fast, obviously. So I mean that's an age old thing. But
Dude. Yeah, and then our generation is going to be the ones 50 years from now saying, "Oh, you guys have AI do everything for you." It's going to be the same thing.
back in my day I had to write my own papers
Yeah.
on the computer I had to type them out.
They're going to say, "You wrote papers?"
Oh, you guys had keyboards?
Yeah.
You mean like physical, like you typed with it?
I just think, and it writes it out for me.